What's up, guys? Welcome back to Echoing Theology. This is episode 13. I'm psyched, excited to have my totus to his brother here, Erin Donlon. As you can tell, Erin is a seminarian, which he can tell us a little bit about that. But welcome to the podcast, Erin.
All right, thanks, Dale. Happy to be here. Yeah. Oh, I didn't realize this was episode 13. Hey, it's a good number.
It
It's a
is
good
a good
number.
number. We're
It's not
recording.
it's not it's not an unlucky number. Everyone makes it an unlucky number, but hey, it's the apostles plus one. Jesus, like, come on, man.
This is
Like you got
true,
it all.
and actually, I mean, it's also the number of the apostles if you consider the replacement of Judas.
Yeah.
Um, so 13. And we are recording this on a Wednesday, not a Friday. So I think we're good.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So great.
Yeah. Catholics were not superstitious. We may be slightly stitious, but not
Not
superstitious.
superstitious. We just have a lot of order to things. It's great. All right, so Erin, if you could get started, just tell us a little bit about yourself, growing up, things of that sort.
Yeah, sure thing. So again, my name is Erin Donlon. I pretty much I'm one of seven. I've got a twin brother. So pretty much I was born in 1994. My whole family comes from a military family. Both my grandfathers were captains in the Navy. My dad retired as a commander. Um, so I was born down in Maryland before for right before my dad retired, and then we moved up to Maine. So pretty much since 1996, I've been up in Maine. Pretty much born and raised, or pretty much raised there. And um, so I have an older sister, twin brother, three younger sisters, and a younger brother. And so we pretty much stayed in the same house. We were homeschooled all the way through high school. Um, and yeah, pretty much grew up cradle Catholic, very much involved with the parish life. Was always at mass on Sunday, and also being homeschooled, we had a very strong catechesis, like kind of did the old school Baltimore catechism. So
Love
so
it.
it's a little bit more like rote memorization sometimes, but it's really really good. Um, and then yeah, and then pretty much near the end of high school was pretty much I had felt a call to the priesthood, like kind of like going back to when I was like seven or whatever. But I was like, the only two schools I wanted to go to were the Naval Academy and Maine Maritime Academy, which is where I ultimately ended up, was Maine Maritime. And yeah, and so while I was there, I was studying engineering. While I was there, just got involved with Knights of Columbus, started council there, then got involved nationally. And it was through that I also got really involved with the military archdiocese. Um, it started with being invited to go on a retreat with some of the focus missionaries at West Point. I was invited by this Franciscan brother that works with the community there, and I'm there, and the priest kind of was like, thinking about becoming a priest, didn't know me from anybody, and I was like, who told you that? And so just kind of spurred this on, and then I did some discernment with the military, and also at the time I was kind of discerning with Portland, and then all of a sudden it just kind of they both converged. Graduated from Maine Maritime, worked for about 6 months shipping, and was a officer in the reserves for the Navy before entering seminary, and now I've been in seminary pretty much ever since. So
Yeah,
um and then basically in 31 days I'll be ordained a transitional deacon for the Diocese of Portland. So it's pretty exciting.
great. Yeah, no, that's awesome. 31 days from now, that would be the 25th of May from the time of this recording. So, if you're in the Diocese of Portland, just certainly pray for yourself. And then we also actually have two mutual friends as well who are being ordained the same day. So, shout out to Paul and Tyne. So, we love you guys. No, that's very exciting. Diocese of Portland guy, that's big. The main focus on this podcast is definitely the Echo program, just kind of that's the majority of who I'm working with right now. But we also try to get a lot of projects and a lot of promotions for the Diocese of Portland as well, just because that's our home, right? That's our home diocese. And it's funny, I think coming from Maine, you might have the same perspective that like you can talk about Maine with people from Maine and nobody cares because we're all from there. But anytime you go anywhere else, everybody's so intrigued and that's all you want to talk about. So like even down here in the Archdiocese of Galveston, Houston, like people have a lot of questions about the Diocese of Portland, Maine. They don't really understand the concepts of clusters either, which I find funny.
Yeah, no, I not too many people do. But yeah, so basically the premise of a cluster. So like the Diocese of Portland, Maine. So the diocese is the entire state of Maine. Um, and as you can, if you look at the geography, it looks like the southern part of the state has a good number of people, but then it gets more and more rural the more and more north you go, especially as you get closer to Canada.
Yeah.
And um and so it's really a missionary diocese, because right now we're heavily dependent on a lot of foreign priests to help with the missionary work of the pastoral work of the diocese. And um and so it's so in that sense it requires a lot of work. And but anyway, the idea with the clustering was back 20-25 years ago, um as we were seeing the decline of the number of priests in the diocese, and the decline in church attendance. One of the things was like, okay, having all these, we had a very large number of churches in the diocese, and we're like, we got to kind of bring it down a little bit. And how are we going to do this? So the idea with the cluster was to have multiple churches kind of under the banner of one parish, but still have the identity of the parish itself. So it would be like each individual parish, but they're under one, or church, but under one parish. So
Right.
um, it because like each church technically, this is kind of going into a little bit of like canon law and stuff, but
Sure.
each church has their own rights and stuff. And so the clustering was a way to try and do that. And so and like for dioceses that are able to, they just keep the single parishes at one church, one parish. But in our diocese, we have multiple churches for one parish. So
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think I may have talked about it when Matt was on, but I think Lewiston is a good, and there's many others, but Lewiston's a really good example of that. Like Prince of Peace Parish, the one that I work in here in Houston, is over 9,000 families registered, but it's in one single like facility.
mhm.
Lewiston, Prince of Peace Parish, consists of five physical churches over the course of three towns, but it's run by one pastor and two parochial vicars and a few other priests within that, within that territory. So that's kind of what a cluster looks like. Um,
Yeah,
it's very different, but it's unique in the same sense. But it wasn't that long ago that I remember specifically Lewiston having like six or seven Catholic churches. I mean, when I say not that long ago, I mean like probably 20 years ago. But like, so I guess a while ago. Um, but each church had its own pastor and each church had its own parochial vicar. I think everybody had a deacon at that time. So, we've certainly seen that decline. But I also want to just make a note. I think that our diocese is very blessed, even though we have minimal priests, and that's from here or from overseas, or other countries rather. I think we're very blessed with the priests that we do have, and I think we're also blessed with the seminarians that we have.
absolutely. Yeah, so we like to stress the quality over quantity up in Maine. So but yeah,
Yeah.
it is because it is missionary work. It's beautiful ministry, it's hard ministry. And just the mission like going forward, like for myself and for my brothers in formation,
Mhm.
like we've got a lot of work to do, like especially in the realms of catechesis, the dignity of the human person, I think. Um and like we've kind of connected before on like theology of the body and stuff.
Absolutely.
There's just such a strong, there's just a strong importance of doing that. And I think right now, especially in Maine, um, there's a strong secular culture. And I think one of the things that's going to be moving forward, and I had never thought about this before entering this, maybe going down a little bit of a rabbit hole, but never thought of this before entering ministry, but actually dealing with members of the LGBTQ um, community. And what I mean, like there, I'm not talking about like James Martin, like theology or whatever, but a lot of people are wounded, are hurt, are lost. They're trying to find themselves. They're trying to find their identity. And right now, society is telling them they need to be going. They need to be doing this. You need to be just you do you, man. It's like you just have to be like who you feel like you need to be, rather than actually it's like actually you do have an identity. It's
Mhm.
an identity that's rooted in being a beloved son or daughter of Christ. And there's so many beautiful gifts that each a man or a woman has in the community of the world. And so I see that just becoming another demographic is like people that are coming from maybe doing a transition or coming back from making a terrible mistake with doing
Yeah.
a transition, and coming back and looking for a place of healing and comfort. And it's like one of the church is going to be one of those places, because that's what we're called to do as
Yeah.
ministers, is to provide for that healing, whatever it may be, like to help people find that healing, but also help them to move forward to live a life that's in conformity with the will of God. So
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, you kind of touched on this TOB thing, and that, and you and I have had numerous conversations about TOB, and I don't want to have those conversations again on here, but um, I'm sure the audience is annoyed of that. But like the project that, that I've been working on here has been, I think, fairly fruitful. And I'd love to come back home and like, do like a summer series or something like that when I actually have time to do that. But I do think that theology of the body would be extremely helpful in our diocese because it's a very underwhelmingly known topic, I think, in our diocese. From many reasons. I think we're so worried about, which makes sense. For a long time, the last 10 years or so, we've been worried about um, administrative type of stuff where we need to just get things back in order. Where that specific type of ministry, and to your point, doing the basics of catechesis and trying to start from scratch almost, that going into that type of topic would be a little bit above that in the sense, meaning that you have to lay the groundwork first before you can jump to that.
oh yeah, absolutely. And like part of it is like you've got to, for the first thing, I was just reading, I can't remember, his name's Monsignor Shea from uh uh um Catholic University out in Mary in North
Oh yeah,
Dakota.
he did a wonderful talk at Seek this past year. He got a standing ovation.
Yeah, so he just wrote a book. I can't remember the title off the top of my head. I'll get it to you so you can, if
Sure.
you want to share that. But it's kind of like living in a post-Christian age. But he actually brings it up. We're actually living not so much in a post-Christian age. We're actually living. He likes to say we're living in a pre-evangelization age, which means that we're at a point where people kind of have heard about this Jesus guy, and that's about it. They're like, oh yeah, he's like this great philosopher dude or whatever, said some cool things, kind of had this weird death. That's kind of like the end of the story. Like he's kind of like, you can put him next to Buddha, Muhammad, whatever. But it's like, and that's where we need to start, because it's like, who is Jesus? Because
Yeah.
if you don't know who Jesus is at the beginning, you can't go to the next step. And
No.
I think and I think that's going to be, that's like the big focus, because it's, in a way, it's almost easier now to do to do stuff with faith, like in one sense it's easier because now basically we get to start from scratch.
Yeah.
Like basically we got to talk about who Jesus is, and then you can build it up from there.
Yeah.
But right now, and that, I think that's going to be that certainly, like with the guys from my class and stuff, that's a big focus of ours, is like, okay, how do we do this evangelization, but basically like starting with an encounter of who Christ is, who Jesus is as a person, and then what did he do, what did he say, and what does this mean? And
Yeah.
and then everything kind of falls into place after that. So, but
Yeah, definitely. No, that's a good point. I remember a couple months ago, I was talking to a friend, and I don't know what you just said that stirred this, but it kind of comes to mind. I think it probably has to do with like understanding who God or who Christ is actually. And I remember talking to a friend of mine he's going to not mass, but he's going to a service on Sundays as of late. So that there's growth. But I remember we were doing a Bible study one time, and we were talking about Padre Pio. And we were talking about how Padre Pio, God gave him spiritual, like amazing spiritual gifts, that miracles would always happen around him. It wasn't him directly, but it was a gift that God provided to, a spiritual gift that God provided to him, right? A spiritual type gift. And I remember like, and I've heard this on numerous occasions, it's been phrased in different ways, but I remember my buddy saying, you know, I hope someday I can like pray and like train myself to get those gifts. And I'm like, that's not how it works. It's not you don't go to God, give him a wish list, and then all of a sudden, like, you're not cashing in like
mhm.
a coupon to him. It's so much more than that. But to understand who God is where we got to start for sure.
Yeah, and that just makes me think. So that's basically um, like a form of Pelagianism, which basically means that you're doing like you have to earn your way to getting to heaven or whatever. Like it's based on your merit alone, and
Yeah.
it's not like that. But one of the running jokes, the reason I bring this up is like some people are like, "Hey, I've got this thing going on today, and there's also this other thing," and I'll be like, if I pray hard enough, I'll get that Pelagian my Pelagian side. I'll be able to buy locate
Yeah.
like Padre Pio, but it doesn't work like that. It's basically like God gives us the capacity
Hmm.
where we're at
Yeah.
to receive the grace where we're at. So, but yeah.
Totally. Totally. So I do want to talk about Totus Tuus a little bit, but I do have a question for you
Mhm.
considering, so you're in a very unique spot. I think you're probably the only person that I've been able to talk to, and you're the only one directly that I know who's kind of I don't know if a dual seminarian is the proper term, but you're discerning for the Diocese of Portland as
Mhm.
well as the Archdiocese of the military. So how has that experience been for you?
Yeah, so I'm what's so the term that we use for that is co-sponsored seminarian. So I'm
Much more
studying for the
proper.
diocese. So I'm studying to be a seminarian for the Diocese of Portland. That's going to be my home diocese. But then for a period of time, I will be with the Archdiocese for the Military Services of the United States. And so the way that kind of works, so the military um, has a critical need for Catholic chaplains to be assigned to military units all over the world and all the different branches. Um, and so, especially in the military, um, they can't have deacons. They can't just have seminarians or like they have lay leadership involved, but that's in the absence of a priest. But obviously, you can't have the sacraments without a priest.
Yeah.
And so the military archdiocese as an ordinary, it's a unique um, it's a unique um, setup for a diocese. Uh, it was instituted in 1985 by John Paul II, and it was to tailor to the need for chaplains in the military. And so the thing with the archdiocese for the military services in the United States is they don't incarnate, which means they don't ordain their own priests.
Mhm.
So they are totally dependent on the generosity of other dioceses or religious orders to provide priests to go for a period of time into the military. Part of the reason is the retirement age in the military is very different from a diocese or religious order.
Mhm.
In the military, pretty much your cutoff is 62 or between 62 and 65 years old, whereas in a diocese, it's about 70, 75, could even be a little bit more depending on where you are, especially religious.
Yeah.
But the idea is they uh, um, they they go to a priest will be assigned to the military could be for, usually the term is about 5 years. Um, and they'll stay as for however long their bishop from their home diocese will let them do that. So, for example, right now, I'm studying to be a Navy chaplain. So that means I'll work with the Navy, the Marine Corps, and the Coast Guard. And then, and so being a co-sponsor, and so then I'll be there for at least 5 years before the diocese could call me back or let me stay. I don't know how that'll happen. Um, that can
All in
take
God's
care of itself
hands.
in
Yeah,
years. Yeah, it's only a couple of years away, um, but the idea is, as a co-sponsor seminarian, what that does for me is, so it takes a little bit of the financial burden off of my home diocese. So basically, I receive because normally when you're in seminary, the diocese or the religious order that you're with pays for your formation.
mm-hmm.
Um, it Most dioceses, some dioceses might do something different, but most of them are typically in this. And so formation for a seminarian is pretty expensive, and so military archdiocese actually covers half of that. All of my formation is half of it's covered by the military archdiocese, and um, and that's not coming from the government. It's actually coming from generous donors to the military, recognizing that there's such a big missionary need, just like there is a big missionary need in the Diocese of Portland. There's a almost larger need in the military.
Totally. Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. And you're getting your formation at a great place in the Mount St. Mary Seminary.
Yeah, have you heard of that place before?
I don't know. I lived somewhere near there, or somewhere. Oh, I think I lived at Ott's house. That's okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So I'm currently studying at Mount St. Mary's Seminary. So we've got 4 guys studying for the Diocese of Portland, Maine there, and then we have like 6 or 7 guys for the Archdiocese for Military Services as well. But it's a small rural, well, I shouldn't say small. It's a rural seminary in just 20 minutes south of Gettysburg. Beautiful area. It's basically right in the center of where St. Elizabeth Ann Seton started her ministry as the first American saint.
mhm.
We also have a very strong history of just a lot of the early Catholic Church in the United States. There are a lot of connections with that at the Mount. And so it's the second oldest seminary in the country, and it's the largest right now in terms of seminarians in attendance. So it's a beautiful, beautiful, very, very prayerful place.
Yeah, definitely. And there's also while I'm down here in Texas, I just want to kind of make note because I'm very close to Oklahoma City at this point. There's also very strong connections to Blessed Stanley Rother, who is on the road to sainthood, and he's someone we're going to talk about here at some point on another episode. But yeah, very strong ties to the Mount there.
Yeah, and one of the other things is we also have a few guys. We have like 5 or 6 guys in formation from the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City as well.
Really? Okay. Wow.
We just got them back this year. They hadn't been there for a while, so it's really nice to bring the Rother boys back.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, totally. Peter was able to stop over at the Basilica or the shrine when he was down there over the summer.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he told me about that. So
Yeah.
eventually I'll get out there.
Yeah,
So,
no, it's a trip I would like to make. Also, he sent me some pictures of where the Sooners play, which is that's a whole other conversation. But home of the Oklahoma Sooners. So, what was your Totus Tuus experience helpful in formation at all?
oh gosh. Oh, let's see. Yeah. So that was 5 years ago now.
Yeah, we don't have to talk about a certain child, by the way,
Oh yeah.
we don't have
No.
to do that.
Well, we had, like Totus Tuus, like yeah, because you've talked about this on the podcast
I
before,
have,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. So, like, as you guys know, Totus Tuus is a pretty intense program, and like for me, it was just wonderful. Like I was just really graced as a seminarian team leader. Like I actually had Dale, yours truly here, uh, and then Delia and Emily that were on the team. It was just awesome. Like it was an intense summer. I definitely remember like it would Monday and Tuesday would be like rah rah, like all this energy, and then Wednesday it was just like kind of like dragging my feet to the point where I was like falling asleep standing up sometimes. But
I remember you hallucinating
um,
over some lobster during a team meeting. Or
yeah, something
dreamed,
like
not
that.
hallucinated. That's more proper.
It was more dreaming, and but yeah, it was just wonderful. And one of the things I really like about that program is is the like in the intensity, you can really bring out a lot of beautiful like catechesis to younger people, which I think it's one of those things like we were kind of talking about, like the need to have that encounter with Jesus. And I think it's and part of it's like part of that encounter begins with having good people to look up to. And so like for us, it was like or for the team members, for a lot of these kids, some of them were kind of like dropped off by their parents or whatever, but it
Yeah.
was also an opportunity for them to have fun and also be able to live out the sacramental life, like going to daily mass, having access to confession, um, and also just getting to know uh, the rosary and going through the like sections of the catechism. Like one of the things like I hope as especially as I get closer to being a parish priest and stuff is actually incorporating like making using what's being taught at Totus Tuus in the summers is something that translates into the religious ed is going to be teaching throughout the year. And so, and obviously, like being able to focus a little bit more on it. Um, but it's just one of those beautiful things. It's just an opportunity for an encounter, and also like an exposure from a vocational standpoint, which is I'm all about that vocation promotion life.
I hope so.
But it's also an opportunity for them to encounter seminarians or people that are in love with Christ that are younger,
Mhm.
that want to live out their faith. They want to help people learn about their faith. Also are just fun people to have around. And so but yeah, my Totus Tu's experience was just really great because it really exposed me to a lot of the dioceses which I'd never seen before.
Mhm.
Like especially northern Maine, because I'm kind of like a southern Maine guy, and there's a whole other part of the state. It's a very different culture,
Yeah.
people, but it's very different from northern Maine is very different from southern Maine, and so it's almost like the same like polar opposites, like northern United States versus the South. It's
Very
very
different. From living here, it's very different.
yeah, not just climate, but also just kind
Yeah.
of like some of the temperaments as well, especially
Culture slowing down.
attitude.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially attitudes towards religion as well. It's very different. And
Yeah.
so, but it's just a great, it was just kind of like, it also reinforced like what I'd been learning in seminary. And also like working with the team members, which is awesome. And like also kind of like at the end of the Totus Tuus, like it was pretty much like we finished and I had like maybe 4 or 5 days before going back to seminary.
Mhm.
Totus Tuus is intense. And so like I just came back to seminary. I just remember being kind of like exhausted. I was like, and it was like one of those things that's like in those moments of desolation, like in the spiritual life, you're just kind of like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be doing this or whatever. And it was so funny. It was in that fall for classes, one of the electives that I did, and I really attribute this to kind of like saving my vocation, if you
Yeah.
will, was a class on the writings of John Paul II, especially regarding the human person through love and responsibility, theology of the body, and then some of his encyclicals.
Sure.
Like for me, that was just so good because like part of me was like, man, I love working with kids. I loved working with the members of my team, but I was like, man, I could do that. I could possibly, I would be fine with being married.
Mhm.
Like, is God calling me to marriage or is he calling me to priesthood? And, but it was actually in that class in particular, like, it was just really getting to, like, to understand the dignity of the human person, but also further was just like the beauty of the vocation of marriage, but also the beautiful and the beautiful vocation of priesthood. Both of them have a element of spousal sacrifice,
Yes.
whereas with marriage, it's very visible
Hmm.
that um, that spousal sacrifice is very, very visible. And also the importance, like John Paul II really always talks about reciprocal self-giving.
Of course. Yeah.
And so like you see that very externally in a married couple, especially one that really lives out that vocation and lives out their faith in relation to their vocation.
Hmm.
Um, it's the same with the priesthood and religious life as well. It's less visible because like a lot of people, because we talk about priests are married to their spouse, the church, just as Christ is. And so, and we don't see, and so like sometimes it's hard to see that, get that image, but scripture is just chock full of these images of the bridegroom, Jesus the bridegroom,
Hmm.
in love with his bride, the church. And and like for me, and that was one of the things, was to continue to discern who is my bride, and like who, and one of the things in through that class, and also just through the discernment in seminary, which is really learning that my spouse, my bride, God willing, in a month will
Yeah.
be the church, and more specifically, it'll be my bride in the Diocese of Portland, Maine.
Yeah.
Uh, so
That's beautiful. Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And I mean, ultimately for both vocations, right? And we don't have to go into a tangent. I just want to kind of make clear that both of the vocations are ultimately there to sanctify you, to bring you back to a um a spiritual spousal relationship with God,
mhm.
right? But you look at the priests and you look at a religious vocation, we sometimes call it a higher vocation in specific terms, mainly because they're already taking that extra step. I think that's probably the best way to kind of keep things simple.
Yeah, yeah. It basically, in a sense, based on ontology,
Yeah.
which is basically the change of the person in that vocation is different for religious versus someone married. But that can go, we can go into a whole thing on that. But but basically, the marriage is an image, is an image, is it's imperfect, but it's an image of the Trinitarian life, where you're united to your spouse, and that's reciprocal self-giving. That's that's reflect we that is marriage is a reflection of that Trinitarian relationship in the persons of the Trinity as well. But but as like scripture says, there is no marriage in heaven, because
Right.
we'll be fully united with God. And so in that sense, with religious and the priestly vocation, is we're we're helping we're also that image of like, hey, this is what we will be like, where we are totally espoused to Christ in heaven. And so it's just like that image. So
Yeah, it's definitely it's an image of the eschaton, of the time to come, right? Of the heavenly
absolutely, yeah.
future. So no, that's good. I got one other question for you, and then I want to actually two quick questions for you, and then I want to kind of play a quick game with you, and then we can kind of wrap things up. But
Yeah.
what advice would you give to anybody thinking about discerning seminary? Like one piece of advice, because I know there's a lot to say about it.
Yeah. So the big one, that are discerning to go to seminary, like part of it's like, yeah, I think one of the big things a lot of people get tripped up is like, when they're discerning, is they're like they're looking to discern priesthood all the way. Like basically, oh man, okay, by the time I get to by the time I get to thinking about applying for seminary, I am fully committed. Like priesthood is going to be, it's priesthood or bust. That's not what this is about. Like, first of all, it it's you, the whole point of formation is to help is a more intense focus on becoming who God is calling you to be. That's our primary vocation. Our primary vocation is a call to holiness, to become saints.
Capital V.
Yeah. What?
Capital V.
Yes. Yeah. And so for us, it's that choice to say yes to God, to want, to desire to be with Him in heaven, to know, love, and serve Him. That's our primary. That's what we're supposed to start with. Like, if you want to go into the Baltimore Catechism, that is the first. That's the first. How do you grow in your relationship with God? Know, love, serve. That's, you can't get any simpler than that. But for those that are applying to seminary, like, part of it, it should be coming from a place of prayer. Big one is spend time in front of the Blessed Sacrament. Find a spiritual director, like a priest, or if you're looking for, like, find someone that you can kind of talk to about the spiritual life and where you're going. Also, going to seminary does not mean you're going to become a priest. It's not. It's actually a place where you can grow. Not only you can grow, you grow spiritually, uh, humanly, in the sense of, like, building and developing good habits, good relationships, intellectually learning philosophy, learning theology, and then also pastoral. Like, how do I work with other people in, like, a parish, like in a pastoral setting? And part of that is, and we all need this. We all need this kind of formation.
Yeah.
Seminary gives you more of that in a more intense, structured environment.
Yeah.
And those who are kind of thinking or have some reservations about seminary, nothing but good things will come from being in seminary. For some people, they are really blessed with, like, being in seminary for, like, they know within a couple months, okay, seminary is not for me. Priesthood is not for me. I'm going to pursue other things. But that's not wasted time. The Lord does not waste time with us. Everything that we do, whether it be good or bad, is used by God to bring something greater in the future. And so, but it's part of it is our ability to surrender, not passive surrender, but like an active surrender where we commit ourselves to God and, like, trust Him that He knows what's going on, even when we're in times where we have no idea, and just letting Him do that. So, for those, basically a roundabout way of saying, if you're looking to apply to seminary, apply to seminary. As much of it's a discernment by you to become a priest. It's also the church's discernment of you. That, like, you get to a point in formation, like right now, like this year, I got to a point where at the beginning of the spring semester, I got to a point where I was like, okay, this is where God is calling me to be. But then that's my formation is, my discernment's done. Granted, it's not quite done till I get the hands laid on me and all
I
that
know what
stuff.
you mean. I know what you mean. Yeah.
But my discernment's done. But then it was the discernment of the seminary and also the diocese. You're applying for those who are applying for seminary. You're applying for seminary now. You're not applying to be voted on to be ordained in the spring.
Sure.
You're there to grow in your relationship with Jesus. That's the key. And because we all come from different walks of life, and seminary helps with that. And I know you could probably say for yourself,
Sure.
Dale, like, you learned a lot about yourself in that time, that year that you were in seminary.
Yeah.
And there's nothing but good things that'll come from it. And so, if you're thinking about applying, apply, and continue to pray and ask for the Lord to continue to give you guidance and some clarity. He's not going to give you he's not going to give you smoke signals in the sky saying, you're going to be a priest, do this. No, God doesn't work like that. He wants us to pursue Him, to choose Him, He's already chosen us for whatever vocation that we are called to. He wants us to choose that. So, and that's the beauty of our free will is God wants us to choose him, and he gives us every opportunity to do that. And part of that is like when you're applying, that's part of your opportunity to let him, uh, he's letting you say yes to going this next step.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, that's very good. And yeah, I do have a lot to say on the matter, but that's a whole other tangent, and I think you just summed it up very, very good. Um, but yeah, I just want to kind of credit to your point of what you just said. Um, and I'll try to keep this very short, that my 1 year in seminary and learning to listen to the Lord's voice in two different ways. One is knowing, like you said, that we have the freedom to choose, like that's what he wants. And then also listening to those around you who are also in communication with the Lord. So like when I was on one page and the bishop was on the same page and the vocations director was on the same page and the spiritual director's on this, and the, like when everyone's on the same page kind of thinking the same thing in prayer, it's like, okay, that is the Lord's voice. Like that is your sign if you're looking for one. It's not something in the sky, but it's a real practical thing. But yeah, I would say that my formation in seminary has made me more confident in being a friend, a son, God willing, someday a father, husband. Um, it's made me a better teacher, better worker, better coach. Like that time in formation has just really helped in so many facets. So seminary is really, really good for that. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there too. So
yeah. And also, I think part of where you are right now
yeah,
is a fruit of that time in formation.
agreed.
Yeah, because probably maybe you would have gotten here down there in another way, but probably it was actually through like some of the formators are like that kind of helped you look at this and stuff, and like some of
Yeah.
the class.
Yeah, I mean Jacob Hopper's in the same program, and I had Monsignor Heinz for a class. So like there's connections between
Exactly.
those, right? There's a ladder. So
Yeah, and so it's one of those things is like it actually like God draws straight paths with or yeah straight paths with crooked lines.
hmm,
And I always seem to mess up that quote, but anyway, but it's that's kind of what happens. Like that's a you like you are here.
hmm,
Part of it was is you because you allowed yourself to be led by the Lord to go to seminary, but then also like he led you to this path
yeah,
and to this gift and this journey. And so it's just, like for me, it's just kind of like mind blowing when you kind of look out from like 10,000 feet, right? Because we especially in our society, we want to focus in like we want to be like street level, we want to be like that yellow guy in Google Maps, but really, God's looking up from like 10,000 feet up. He's like, okay, this is how Dale is going from A to B.
sure.
And let's just kind of see it's all a little squiggly here. It's not a straight line, but it gets there.
We'll get to
And
the point. Yeah.
so, but yeah.
Totally. So one other quick question, and then I just want to play a quick game with you. Um, Not theology related. What position are the Packers drafting tomorrow night at 25?
Oh gosh. Um, I think we need line. We need a line guy.
You do, yeah. There's
Yeah.
plenty of them this year.
Yeah,
So
I think that'll be pretty good because I think Packers are set. I'm very biased about that, but they surprised a lot of people, and part of it, and they got some swagger to them. I like it.
you do. I'll say you guys are going to be because you guys are playing against Detroit. So I think Detroit is still going to be the favorite this year. No, I'm not
Oh
going to
yeah,
lie. But
I do.
if they do, I think you guys are going to probably end up as the 5 seed. So I think you'll be
Yeah,
in the finals.
I'd rather play underdog. I'd rather play underdog
I think
than
you guys
have
won
high.
if I'm not mistaken, you guys won the Super Bowl in 2010 as the 6th seed. And at that time, there were only 6 seeds. There weren't 7. So,
Right, exactly. And we were getting close
um,
this year. So
and the Giants did the year before, but you're getting really close. But so offensive line, that's good. Um, all right, so I just want to play a quick game with you, and then we can wrap things up. I'm going to ask you a question, and then I just want your quickest answer. You ready?
go. Mm-hmm.
Here we go. Best place to relax in Maine.
Bar Harbor.
Favorite spot in Washington, D.C.?
Uh oh shoot. Mm-mm. Uh uh Arlington National Cemetery.
Great. Favorite food?
Uh oof. Dang it. Steak.
Favorite place to visit near Emmitsburg?
Gettysburg. Oh, sorry. Frederick.
Okay. Maine summers or Maine winters?
Oh, Maine winters.
I'm gonna go opposite of you there.
Hey, I like skiing, man.
It,
I'm like, I got the bug. So,
fair
but
enough.
anyway.
Fair enough. I think Maddie actually just went on a trip, maybe a month or so ago. Favorite book?
Dang it. I've been reading a lot of books recently. I would say, okay, favorite spiritual book, He Leadeth Me, followed by
Good
Breed
one.
of God. And then favorite book, I just recently read When Pride Still Mattered, about Vince Lombardi. Fantastic book.
I am in the middle of. Have you read Characters? What Counts?
No, send me it though.
Let me finish it, and then I'll yeah, because that one you just mentioned about Vince, that is on my. I think I have that book at home, but I'm bringing more books down here in the summer, so because we can talk about that another time. But current favorite gospel,
John, no question.
current favorite scripture passage,
John 21:15-19.
favorite hobby.
Skiing and snowboarding.
Okay. Best notice to is high school night activity.
Shaving cream wiffle ball.
Sweet. These last two are going to be a little controversial. Remove one New England state.
Connecticut. No question. No question. That's not controversial at all. That's a
Matt,
no-brainer.
Matt said Connecticut. I said Connecticut. You said Connecticut. I had
It's
another New England person on here. They said Connecticut. It's the only
Connecticut, man. Connecticut is really just a branch off of New York. But anyway, that's beside the
truly.
point.
Take one state out of New England and throw it in New England.
Take one. Oh, throw a different
Throw a
state.
random state that's not currently in New England outside of well, not Connecticut, and throw it in here. We also don't want New York or New Jersey, but that's just me.
That would be New England. Mm.
What gives New England vibes, maybe, from outside of the territory?
This would be like so random, but maybe just because of beach. Actually, New Jersey.
What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say Hawaii for
I
the
thought you were
beach
gonna say
vibes.
Arkansas for some reason. I was like,
Oh no, 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 no.
Louisiana?
Uh, yeah,
Uh,
no, because like well, obviously New Hampshire, Vermont, they have their own thing, but they don't have as much of they don't have coastal, but like obviously like
they don't
Rhode
have
Island,
police. They don't have
Massachusetts, and
LLB.
Maine,
I
it,
mean,
it's all coast there, and so it's like yeah, you got to get the beach vibes. Uh, Actually, Florida. Sorry,
I
I'll
think you
take
could
that back.
throw Florida, and I think you could also throw North Carolina, like one of the Carolinas in there too. I think you could do that.
Because they're
I know,
pretty much
I know
they
you.
pretty much are all just former Mainers anyway.
This is true. Definitely down in Florida. And I know you also had a nice time in South Carolina. So, um, anyway, well, Erin, thank you for taking this time to meet with us on Echoing Theology. I hope that this episode was kind of fruitful for you and for anybody listening on to this.
Yeah, and if I can say just a final word,
Yeah.
so like especially as Dale and I mentioned, I'm getting ordained May 25th. If you could please keep me in your prayers, and please know that I'll be praying for anyone that's been listening to this podcast or watching the podcast. But yeah, I could just really use your prayers. It's as they say in the old language, oremus pro invicem. Let's pray for each other. I think uh, that's a timeless thing that we as Catholics need to do. So let's pray for each other.
Great. All right. And Davey, too, pray for us.
Pray for us.